Taiwan celebrating its National Day. Marking the occasion, the island's president says a war between Taiwan and China is absolutely not an option. Elon Musk offering a proposal. Taiwan hands over some control to Beijing and becomes a special administrative region of China. But Taiwan says its freedom isn't for sale. An update on the U.S. fentanyl crisis. Within months, American authorities seized enough fentanyl to kill 36 million people, 10% of the country's population. And nuclear threats from Russia, North Korea, and China. What do the dynamics look like? We sat down with Rick Fisher, Senior Fellow at International Assessment and Strategy Center, to learn more. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Taiwan is celebrating its National Day with parades, performances, and a determination to defend its freedoms. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen on Monday addressed the tension with mainland China, saying this about the democratic island's sovereignty.
Taiwan is celebrating its National Day with parades, performances, and a determination to defend its freedoms. And Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen on Monday addressed the tension with mainland China, saying this about the democratic island's sovereignty.
The consensus of the Taiwanese people and our ruling and opposition parties is to defend our sovereignty and our free and democratic way of life. On this point, we have no room for compromise.
Tsai added that a war between Taiwan and China is absolutely not an option for resolving Beijing's claim to the island, and she reiterated her willingness to talk to Beijing. She also plans to boost the island's defenses, saying the destruction of Taiwan's democratic freedoms would be a major setback for democracies around the world.
We will use our actions to tell the world that Taiwan will take on the responsibility of self-defense. We will not sit back and wait for our fate to be decided.
U.S. lawmakers are praising Taiwan's democracy amid its National Day celebrations. Senator Ted Cruz called the island, quote, a beacon of democracy, adding that its prosperity and freedoms are an ever-present rebuke to the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda and repression. And Senator Marco Rubio wrote that Beijing's aggression makes it all the more important for the U.S. to support Taiwan's sovereignty. Meanwhile, in response to Tsai's speech, the Chinese Foreign Ministry says Taiwan is not an independent state and has no so-called president. The communist regime claims the island as its own and has escalated military threats against it after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island in August. Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
Taiwan should become a special administrative region of China, like Hong Kong. That's what Elon Musk, the world's richest man, suggests for the island. He says he believes it would resolve tensions between China and Taiwan. Here's more.
Billionaire businessman Elon Musk has suggested tensions between China and Taiwan could be resolved by handing some control to Beijing. The idea of a special administrative zone similar to Hong Kong was floated in an interview with the Financial Times. Musk was responding to questions about China, where his Tesla electric car company operates a large factory in Shanghai. The world's richest man also said he believed conflict over Taiwan was inevitable and warned of the potential impact on the wider global economy. Beijing has long vowed to bring Taiwan under its control and has not ruled out using force to do so. It currently views the democratically ruled island as one of its provinces, although Taiwan, which is home to 23 million people, strongly objects to China's sovereignty claims. In the past, China has offered Taiwan a one-country, two-systems model of autonomy, similar to Hong Kong, but it has been rejected by all mainstream political parties and has no public support. The businessman's latest geopolitical remarks come days after he proposed a so-called peace plan via a Twitter poll about the war in Ukraine. One of his ideas included permanently ceding territory to Russia. Musk pledged to support Ukraine earlier this year and provided a Starlink internet service to the country, which has been vital to ensure secure military communications. Musk said China has sought assurances that he would not offer the Starlink service there.
Following Elon Musk's suggestion, both China and Taiwan took to Twitter to respond. China's ambassador to the U.S. thanked the Tesla CEO, while Taiwan's de facto ambassador to Washington wasn't impressed, saying, quote, "Taiwan sells many products, but our freedom and democracy are not for sale." What would Taiwan look like as a special administration zone in China? To get some perspective on Elon Musk's suggestion, let's take a look at Hong Kong. Britain returned Hong Kong to Chinese rule in 1997. The city was promised freedoms under a one country, two systems policy, meaning Hong Kong would be governed separately from the rest of China. But the Chinese Communist Party has since eroded that distinction. Over the past 2 decades, Beijing reshaped Hong Kong, clamping down on protests, silencing dissent, integrating party loyalty into its education system, and revamping election laws to remove opposition. Beijing maintains that Chinese rule has restored stability to Hong Kong, following mass pro-democracy protests in 2019. But to many in the U.S. and other democratic nations, the communist regime has undermined the freedoms that made it an international finance center. Taiwan getting support from a small nation in the Pacific. Palau is one of only 14 countries in the world that maintains diplomatic ties with Taiwan, despite mounting aggressions from communist China.
The people of Palau deeply value the friendship between our two nations and are committed to supporting Taiwan despite the mounting aggressions in our region.
During a visit to Taiwan, Palau's president offered strong backing amid Beijing's growing pressure on Taiwan. He also condemned Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Palau has a population of about 20,000 people and is a close U.S. ally. Beijing claims the self-ruled democratic island of Taiwan as its own territory and has threatened to forcibly take it over. Taiwan has faced increased military pressure from China, especially after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited the island in August. How widespread is fentanyl in the U.S.? Within just 3.5 months, enough fentanyl to kill 36 million people was seized on American soil. That's 10% of the U.S. population. The Justice Department recently announced that from May to September, the Drug Enforcement Administration seized more than 10 million fentanyl pills and about 1,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. 390 related cases have been investigated. 1/8 of them involve overdose poisonings, and 1/3 are somehow linked to social media platforms like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. Fentanyl has been dubbed the deadliest drug for Americans. In 2021, more than 100,000 people died from overdoses, 2/3 of them from fentanyl or other synthetic opioids. Most fentanyl precursors originate from China. China is showing off its latest narrow-body jet, built to rival major competitors like Boeing and Airbus. But how many parts of the plane are actually made in China? Plus, foreign suppliers that provided parts were reportedly hacked by China. Here's a closer look at the backstory. China is taking another step forward on its way to competing with Boeing and Airbus in the commercial aerospace market. The nation certified its first homegrown C919 jet after launching it 14 years ago. It's designed to rival jets made by Boeing and Airbus, though products from both companies currently outperform China's new aircraft. As for the new jet, not all of its parts are made in China. The landing gear, APU, and electricity system come from Honeywell. The engine comes from a joint venture between GE Aviation and a French aerospace firm. Michelin provided the tires. The flight control system and fuel system are from Parker Aerospace, a veteran U.S. aerospace manufacturer. The Chinese side was mostly responsible for the radar cover and wings. Many of these suppliers also provide parts for Airbus and Boeing planes, and they are critical parts of these two giant supply chains. What's more, China reportedly went after the foreign suppliers for their technology needed to build the plane. That's according to a report from CrowdStrike, a info security company. One way to get that intel is hacking. To do it, hackers find a way to install custom-made malware into the supplier's network. Between 2010 and 2015, companies like Ametek, Honeywell, GE, Safran were targeted and successfully infiltrated. In Safran's case, a worker in its China office installed the malware on the company's computer network. That's according to an indictment filed in California in 2018. The report says when hackers can't find their way in, then China's intelligence agency would send a human recruiter to acquire the information from company insiders. Xu Yunjun, a Chinese intelligence officer, was reportedly in charge of that recruitment. He was accused of tapping an employee from GE Aviation and coaching him on what to steal from GE's turbine technology. A U.S. federal jury convicted him of espionage last year. Next, let's shift to an update on the Philippines. The nation has reaffirmed ties with the United States since President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. took office. It's a key turnaround from the often hostile demeanor of his predecessor. In a news conference last month, President Biden told Marcos Jr.,
"We've had some rocky times, but the fact is it's a critical relationship from our perspective. I hope you feel the same way."
And in response, Marcos said the Philippines will
continue to look to the United States for that continuing partnership and the maintenance of peace in our region.
This as Philippine and U.S. troops held amphibious landing drills northwest of Manila on Friday. The armed forces of the United States and the Philippines launched 2 weeks of joint naval exercises last week, reinforcing alliances at a time of regional tension with China. U.S. lawmakers are asking the Biden administration what it's doing to protect critical U.S. research and keep it away from Chinese espionage. The issue comes alongside talks about the Chinese Communist Party's or CCP's efforts to recruit scientists from America's top nuclear lab. Let's zoom in.
In a letter led by Representative Michael Waltz, 10 House Republicans are calling for a response. Their letter cites findings of CCP infiltration of the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. That's from a recent report titled The Los Alamos Club. The report says that between 1987 and 2021, at least 162 Chinese scientists worked at the national laboratory. These scientists all returned to China in various research capacities for the CCP. That includes 90 postdoctoral researchers that were recruited through CCP talent programs. The letter asks about the Biden administration's protective policies with respect to the CHIPS Act. The act will fund U.S. semiconductor chip research and manufacturing.
Our next update is all about nuclear threats. We sat down with Rick Fisher, Senior Fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center, to take a closer look at the dynamics between nuclear powers across the globe. Here's his take. On the nuclear note, it seems there's now a lot of tensions, not just with Ukraine and Russia, but also North Korea testing, and President Biden saying it's like an Armageddon we haven't seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis. So how worried should the average American be?
Well, the average American should be quite worried. One would not be faulted for having at least a reasonable hope that Vladimir Putin would at least configure his use of nuclear weapons so as not to spark Armageddon, as President Biden describes it. If the Russians were to employ their very low-yield nuclear artillery shells, killing only Ukrainians, or to demonstrate them over the Black Sea, killing mainly fish, it is not likely that the United States would respond in kind by using tactical nuclear weapons on Russians. Would they do so in Ukraine against Russian forces? That's the big question, because that then would give the Russians an excuse to escalate, perhaps attack Poland, the Baltics, any European country, or even the United States, with larger nuclear weapons. Putin would do this because he knows he has superiority in theater nuclear weapons. He has perhaps close to 10,000 theater nuclear weapons. The United States might have only 200 nuclear bombs deployed in Europe, and these bombs would have to be carried by aircraft that could be shot down by Russia's very, very effective surface-to-air anti-aircraft missile systems. So there is a basic nuclear mismatch.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Nuclear threats are coming from more than just Russia. North Korea and China are also ramping up aggression. But are the U.S. and its allies able to handle it? And should the U.S. return to the nuclear deterrence game?
Peace through strength has been the consistent American policy. It must have enough to deter both China and Russia and North Korea, and we must get back into the regional nuclear deterrence game. We really have no choice. The other choice is to witness our children being drafted and sent off to war. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that's where we are today.
The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.